I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. Thank you. We're blessed to have you here. I'm Kathy Roberts, the Executive Director of Life Choices. Later this evening, you're going to get to hear a story or see a story on a video. It's a couple, Roxanne and Josh, and little Josh, and they're here with us tonight, and you'll get to meet them. They are the story that we get to hear on more than one occasion of women and men who struggle with a decision because they have overwhelming circumstances. And yet Josh and Roxanne mustered up the strength to choose life for their child. But before we get started, I have a little bit of housekeeping to do. And the first is this Life Choices Year in Review on your table. And these are stats that we're proud of for what we did last year. We saw 784 clients, and let me tell you, when we see our clients, we take care of their spirit, their soul, and their body. And so we want to make sure that they are loved, and so they really are blessed when they come through our doors, and you'll get to hear some of that tonight. We saw 13 post-abortion clients for healing, and I'm one of those women that went through that healing, and I wouldn't be here tonight if I had not done that, because women of abortion and men feel that they don't have any hope because they feel shamed and they feel guilt. There's also, it shows how many pregnancy tests we've done, gospel shared, and the students that took part in the education presentations, it was amazing. They need the education that Life Choices provides. It brings them hope, and the students love the teacher. So I want to get into our fire pictures, if we could bring those up, and the before and after. For those who do not know, we were firebombed right after the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the wee hours of the morning. And we're still not back in our building, but we will be soon. We're hoping that on the 29th of January will be our move-in date. I'm sorry, why did I say January? I quit if it's going to be January. I am done. So thank you all for correcting me. September 29th, that's on a Friday. And just some of the people have asked, have they caught the people that did this? No, they haven't, but really they are still pursuing the case. So just be praying that that's taken care of, that the Lord would, wherever they're hiding, whatever rock they're under. If you want to help, we would really appreciate it. We do have some men who are going to be helping us, but we have different locations we're just kind of scattered everywhere. So we can use trucks and bodies. And there is a sign-up sheet somewhere. Do you guys know where Life Choices? Okay, in the entryway. There's a place that has a volunteer sheet that you can sign up. Well, there are so many people I could thank that has helped us through all of this, but then we would be here all night. So suffice to say that you know who you are. Churches that have prayed, churches that have allowed us to use their spaces, people that have prayed, people that have helped us move, you name it. The list goes on. And we just love you, and we thank you so much for everything that you've done to help us. We also on the table, you'll see a baby card, and we started this, I think about 3 years ago. And this is the names of babies born that we saw at Life Choices. And we would love for you to take the child's name and place it wherever you have in your Bible or wherever you do your prayer time. And just lift this child up to the throne room of God. And also the families, they struggle. Some of them struggle. And we don't need to know mama and daddy's name. We don't need to know their last name. We just need to know that they need prayer. And what an honor it would be for them to have you praying over them. And we have a ministry overview. That's not on your table. I didn't want to inundate you with anything else. But if you're interested, it's also out in the lobby. Well, Life Choices has 2 locations, one in Longmont and one in Loveland, and we're committed to be a strong voice for life. All our services are provided to our clients at no cost, and that's because of all of you. So thank you for taking such good care of our clients. Life Choices does not refer or perform abortions. Our licensed professional medical staff and volunteers are amazing, and they take great care of our clients, offering pregnancy tests and ultrasounds and information about pregnancy and prayer. How many places do you know that are medical where the nurses get to pray with their patients? We're under the supervision of Dr. Scott, and I'm so grateful for him. He has served for years at Life Choices, and let me tell you, doctors are busy. And so it's a sacrifice for him, and I'm so grateful for him. Our volunteer advocates are great support to our clients. They listen and to their overwhelming circumstances, and they speak life into their situation. They're really a great help in their hour of need. They're welcoming and non-judgmental. Their goal, of course, is to educate them when they're making life-altering decisions. And there's only 3 choices: parenting, adoption, and abortion. And for those who choose life for their child, we provide material needs: baby clothes, diapers, toiletries, along with information. We have such great communities that have resources that they don't even know about, so we point them in that direction and, even help them with individual needs. We also provide online classes for our clients. We started that during COVID. There's parenting, finances, health, you name it, how to raise your child, what to expect, and just they're tailored to their needs. Our Healing Choices ministry, again, which I have a heart for because I went through that, and I thank God for this Healing Choices ministry. It offers abuse recovery and support after abortion for both men and women. Our education department teaches sexual risk avoidance, and it gives accurate information and the skills to achieve optimal health. They teach in the middle schools and high schools, both private, public, and Christian, and they'll even go to youth groups. These classes are tailored for whatever the teacher needs. And we're always in need of volunteers. When the firebombing hit, we decided we're going to do double for our trouble, so we decided to open up 2 rooms. And so put that in your pipe and smoke it, devil. And so, we did that both at Longmont and Loveland, and now, which is great, but now we need more nurses and more advocates. So if you're interested, sign up sheet in the back. So how many of you know that abortion is legal at all stages of pregnancy in Colorado? At least half. Our state says that women have the right to continue the pregnancy and give birth or to have an abortion, and that these rights cannot be denied, restricted, or interfered with. Well, they lied. Half-truths are not truths at all. This does not support women. The state does not support women who choose life, but only support those seeking abortions. Our state supports a woman's option, or as they call it, health care, to take the chemical abortion pill to abort a baby, but a woman who wants to save their baby after regretting taking a chemical abortion pill will be denied that right if the Senate Bill 190 is approved. Our state has specifically targeted pregnancy medical centers by denying a life-saving method for women who change their mind and want to save their baby after taking the first of 2 chemical abortion pills. However, it is being challenged right now in a lawsuit. So we are still allowed to do the treatment until the decision comes down, which will be October 1st. Our pro-death culture says that this is a dangerous and deceptive practice. So what is this dangerous drug that would have our non-medical legislators who wrote this bill concerned about harming women? It's called progesterone. By administering progesterone as a treatment, the child has a 68% chance of survival. Progesterone is a natural occurring hormone in a woman's body, and it has been used by doctors for over 40 plus years to help women with pregnancies. Heartbeat International reported over 4,500 babies have been saved with no adverse effect to mama or baby. In the abortion world, a woman is minimalized and not cared for. They support giving a woman a chemical abortion pill, which is unsafe and harmful. And by the way, there's been some deaths from it. But they will deny the rights of a woman to receive progesterone to save the life of their child. Isn't it my body, my choice? In their depraved mind, abortion is the only option. They can't believe anyone would choose anything but abortion. And in their arrogance, they think if a woman hears all her choices and chooses parenting or adoption, that they've been deceived by clinics like ours. They don't think that women have the intelligence to make a decision to choose something other than abortion. The fact is, women come to our clinics because they want choice. And in fact, in most centers like ours, we have it written everywhere. We do not perform abortions. We do not refer for abortions. So I think they're smart enough to figure things out. But praise be to God that this death culture belief system is built on sinking sand. And believe me, it's sinking. As Planned Parenthood continues to spend millions upon millions of dollars to advertise, to lure women into their clinics, their places of business are decreasing, and our centers are growing all over the United States without, yes, and praise the Lord, without the funding that they get. Why? Because women want choice. So this is why they have tried to stop us. This is why they try to firebomb people, and this is why they try to use legislation. But we have a secret weapon. It's called the remnant. At times when it seems like they have the upper hand, I think of the stories of old and how God has not changed. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I remember the victories of the remnant. And did you know that you are the remnant? Because you're here and you're standing for life. God does not need the masses to win. He needs you. The prophet Elijah had the prophets of Baal slaughtered. Baal, the god of child sacrifice. Then he was threatened by Jezebel. But when you mess with devils, there's going to be trouble. And Elijah got into fear. He told God he'd had enough. He told God he's just to take his life. And he said he let him know that he was the only one left serving God. But the Lord responded and said, "You're not alone, for I have preserved a remnant for myself, 7,000 who are faithful and have refused to worship Baal." And the Message Bible says it this way: I still have 7,000 that have not quit, 7,000 who are loyal to the finish. I love that. And there's going to be people here that are going to be loyal to the finish, and we're not going to give up, ever. It doesn't matter what they throw at us, we just have to shift. Sometimes I get tired of shift. Well, it's the same today. We have a fiercely loyal minority group of people who are standing in the gap for the unborn. And when you fight for the life and those devils go to chasing you, we just remember we have authority over all the kingdom. God predestined you to be a part of this fight and to take on the gods of Baal and Molech. You are a part of the 7,000 that will not quit. You are making a difference. You stand for the children in the womb who cannot speak for themselves, and for the men and women who need hope and help. And you stand for the families. You are there with every prayer prayed over our clients. And when the gospel is shared and decisions are made for Christ, you're there. You're there for the healing of those with past regrets of abortion. You understand your Father's heart as you stand for life with him. I'm going to end with this, but before I do, I'm going to have Gordon come up. He is on our board. And by the way, I have an amazing board, and I'm not saying it just because I know they write my paycheck. I have an amazing board who is so supportive. They are prayer warriors, and they are just the biggest support I've ever had. And I thank you guys for that. So Gordon's going to come up, but after I speak this word, we're going to listen to or watch the video, and then Gordon will come up and speak. We are going to start a new program at the beginning of the year, and I want him to talk about it. It's something we're so very excited about. So I was finishing up my words, for today, and the Lord told me just to stop everything I was doing and to just start writing. And so I said, oh, okay. And so I put everything aside and I started to write. And as I was writing, I knew this was a word for you. I've never done this before at a Night for Life. And so I actually put a title to it today. It's called A Word from the Lord to My Set Apart Ones. And here's what he said. I knew you before the foundations of the earth was laid. When I was hovering and brooding over the darkness, like a hen with her chicks, I hovered and brooded over you. When the earth was formless and void, empty of my creation, I filled it with you on my mind. When darkness was over the surface of the deep, I made plans for you. You were created in the secret place of my heart. I have chosen you to be an expression of my love. I chose you to take my love, to be fruitful and multiply it. You are important and you are loved. I chose you to take the formless and empty places in the hearts of mankind and bring forth the light that I have placed inside of you to burn brightly like the noonday sun. From Adam and Eve, I spread every race of humanity over all the earth. I determined your appointed time in history, and here you are. It is my intended time for you, and I am giving you unimaginable opportunities to fill the earth with my glory, to seek and save the lost, to set captives free, to tear down the strongholds in the minds of those held captive by a spirit of fear and depression. Do not think lightly of who you are. You are the set apart ones, set apart for me, set apart to make a difference and bring my transformative power of change and multiply it through your volunteering, your intercessory prayers, and your giving. You were born in this season for such a time as this. As gross darkness covers the earth and darkness is over the people, I, the Lord, will rise upon you, and my glory will appear over you. Thank you. God bless you.
My name is Roxanne Gallegos. When I first thought I was pregnant, I was feeling nervous, scared, unsure of what I was gonna do or if I was gonna keep the baby. At that time, me and my boyfriend, we were fighting because we weren't quite together when I got pregnant. And our families, they didn't want us to be together. So one of our options were that I was gonna have an abortion. The conflict that I felt inside, I was honestly just like torn. I was scared and I was crying basically every day because I didn't know what to do because I wanted to keep my baby. Sorry. But I know that his dad didn't want to keep him. So I didn't want to keep a baby that if his dad didn't want him, I didn't want to keep him. I literally made probably 5 appointments that I was gonna have an abortion and just never went through with them. I found Life Choices on Google, and the reason I found it was because I was searching everywhere to try to go and make an appointment, and I couldn't get in anywhere. And I seen that they had a lot of options here and free options that was gonna help me, so that's why I chose them. I'll never forget that you guys were just so accepting. When we came in here, I just felt at ease. I never felt nervous or scared. I felt like you guys were really there for me and you guys were here with no judgment. I also really like that you guys did represent God, but you also weren't pushy about it.
What made me want to come is I knew I was 50-50. I wanted abortion and I didn't. And I knew if we were going to keep it, the baby, that I wanted to be a part of the whole situation of every single part.
I was a little nervous for the ultrasound. I just wanted to know if my baby was healthy.
So when I saw the ultrasound, I was still very confused. I was probably more nervous than anything because now I knew for a fact that there was a baby there.
His reaction was, he couldn't believe it. He had never seen an ultrasound before. He had never seen a baby inside somebody at all. So his reaction was, it was like crazy. He said to see a baby moving and it was still tiny. Literally in person, they showed me a little baby and showed me how big my baby, which is more than, just seeing it inside your belly. You get to see he had little hands and little feet, he's a little baby in there. I can't abort this baby. I knew at that moment I was gonna keep my baby.
Now I'm happy. I can't believe I even had the thought of it now because I would have never even seen his little face. Joy in having our baby right now is way bigger than the fear that we had before.
I feel like, everything that I went through, all the stress and the pain that I went through while I was pregnant, it all meant, it just made me love my baby so much more. He is just the light of our life, of mine, my kids, my boyfriend, and our family. I couldn't imagine my life without my baby.
I just want to say Life Choices, they really did help out throughout the whole process. And they weren't judgmental. We came over the first day, you guys said a prayer for us. Life Choices said a prayer for us. It just felt really good.
This place is very welcoming. They don't judge you in any choices that you make, that you feel like you're going to make. They have a lot of guidance, they have a lot of information, and they're here to help you.
Keep it clapping. Isn't that a great story? I watched that on my video, and every time I watch it, my eyes fill with tears because it's such a great story. I want to introduce Roxanne and Josh and little baby Josh. Would you mind standing for us? It's such an honor to have you here with us tonight. And we were talking before, it takes a lot of courage to even just stand up. But really what took the courage is when they came to Life Choices and made the decision for life. So thank you. Thank you for your testimony and thank you for what you're doing. Life Choices is in the business of life. We always think of unborn babies because of the unspeakable horror of abortion. And we're absolutely right, and we're moving in the center of God's will in our ongoing efforts to help women choose life for their unborn child. But all too often, the dad, unlike Josh, is some anonymous non-entity who never enters the picture, and in such cases, the results are devastating. This is not good. I want to take you to the book of Genesis, where God was creating the earth. And after most of the days that he created, it said, and God saw that it was good. And at the end, when everything was done, kind of like us standing on the Grand Canyon or looking up at the stars, he saw that it was very good. But we always forget that God said that one thing was not good. And that's for man to be alone. And so he brought woman to man, and he put them together. And they made a family. Just like Josh and Roxanne and little baby Josh. That's in the center of God's will. That's what God really wants. It's not good for people to be alone. It's not good for that baby to be alone with his mother alone. It's great to have a family that can truly love each other and glorify God with their family. This is God's family. God created us for relationship first with him, but also with each other. And that starts in the family, and then it flows out to the rest of the world. At Life Choices Pregnancy Center, we care deeply about 3 lives: the baby, the mother, and the dad. And we are not about to let dads just be pushed aside as unimportant. We know from what the Bible says, and we also know from our own experience, how important the father is in the home. Statistics tell us that the presence of a dad in the home, a positive influence, has so many great benefits to the child. Children are much less likely to get into trouble, to end up in jail, to do drugs, all sorts of things. They have a much better chance of having a real life when the dad is there. And that's just a dad that'll step up like Josh did. You're the man. You're the man. As a man and a husband and a grandpa, I know a little bit about being a dad and know a little bit about being a man and what can actually happen in a family. My kids are all grown. My grandkids, my oldest granddaughter is going to be 14 in October. So I've had the pleasure to watch them grow in the love of the Lord. But I also know a thing or two about men. And what I know and what I believe is that inside the heart of every man, God has placed a noble desire to be a hero. A hero. And we got a whole bunch of heroes in this room, don't we? Josh is one of them, and every dad that's in here and every man that wants to serve the Lord is a hero. And that one of the best places that a man can be a hero is not in some race car, not on the football field, not as noble as it is to serve your country in a war. The place where men are most powerful is in the family and the lives of their children. And we know that that influence is so important for those children to thrive. As a result of that, Life Choices Pregnancy Center is going to be starting a bold new initiative that we're calling Welcoming Him in 2024. And I'm so excited about it because I want to see legions of men like you men out here, like Josh, that'll stand up for their family. I have this image. I don't know whether you've been through Loveland. It worked for the Loveland people last night. It's always worked for me. Loveland's a city where they do sculptures. And if you're coming south on 287 where it splits, there is a sculpture there. And I've always seen myself that way. It's an Indian warrior, and he's muscular like me, right? But don't laugh. But he's standing there, and he's got his war spear, and he has vanquished the enemy. And I always seen myself as a man that would stand up and protect my family, love my family, stand in a gap for my family, and help them to thrive and grow. And that's what we want to help men do. We know that when a woman comes to Life Choices and an ultrasound is done, she comes with her boyfriend or her husband, the chances of them keeping that child go up to almost 100%. You know what else that means? That there's almost 100% chance because a man stood up and maybe he gets encouragement from us. Guys, there's going to be opportunities for you to serve, to stand up and to form a family. And for those men to see themselves as the protector and the hero for their family. So we're going to be starting this initiative this year. Our keynote speaker, Kelly Lester, is going to talk about this just a little bit later. So I wanted to take just a few minutes to brag about Kelly a little bit. We're so thrilled that she was able to come to share with us her story. And so Kelly is a wife and mother of 6 children. And she is on a number of different organizations. She's an advocate for Loveline Ministries. She works in outreach and government engagement for And Then There Were None and Pro-Love Ministries, and is a board member for Village Ensemble, Livingstone Ministries. Please join me in welcoming Kelly Lester.
I get the special mic. How's everybody doing tonight? Oh, y'all are better than last night. Last night I had to have a mask twice, so that's good. Well, I am thrilled to be here with you tonight. I have had the best day today. I had the joy of going up to Estes Park and seeing that town, and then I went up and the park, the national park, you have to have a reservation, and I wasn't thinking that far ahead, so I couldn't go into the national park, but I was like, Lord, tell me where to go, and he took me to this great spot, and I did a 6-mile hike, and it was just so beautiful. So you're gonna hear me talk about that hike some tonight in our talk, but the title of my talk tonight is Faith Over Fear. I travel the country, as Gordon said, I live in Richmond, Virginia, married to an amazing man named Robbie Lester. We have 6 children, ages 7 to 15. So y'all pray for him because he is home alone with them a lot. And I get to travel the country, and I get to go and speak to pregnancy centers and different national organizations. And everyone after Roe versus Wade was all scared about the phone calls they were getting and worried about, the graffiti on the wall. And yes, that is very scary. But I have not spoken to anyone until this trip whose building was firebombed. And that is a certain level of faith in action to show up day after day after that kind of an attack has happened. Some of you in this room that knew that happened may have even thought, are we going to be safe going to that event tonight? That's not crazy to have that thought. But the reality is that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Some of you husbands and wives need to turn to each other and say, you have a sound mind. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, because my story is one that has a lot to do with fear, not a lot to do with love in the beginning. I was born in an upper middle class family, one that probably looked somewhat similar to many of yours. Lived in a nice neighborhood on a golf course. But my earliest memories as a 3-4-year-old child was feeling shame and fear, doing inappropriate things with dolls, not feeling secure, biting my fingernails to the point where they were down to their stubs, pulling the hair out in the back of my hair because I just didn't feel safe anywhere that I went. In elementary school, I was picked on, I was teased, I was made fun of to the point where I wouldn't wear the same outfit 2 times because I knew what those kids were going to say to me, and I was afraid of what they were going to say. In high school, I go to a party, snuck out with some friends and went to a party with those very same people who were now not making fun of me, but were now noticing me. And one of the boys came over to me and said, "Hey, Kelly, let's go for a walk." And I thought, oh my gosh, he actually really likes me. And so we went for a walk, and on that walk, he raped me. That night, I told my friends what had happened, and they said, "Oh, Kelly, why would he have done that to you? He could have sex with anybody he wants." And so I felt shame. Several days later, I went to my youth pastor and explained to her what happened, and she said, "Now, Kelly, if you'd never snuck out and gone to that party, that would have never happened." And so that insecurity, that feeling that I don't belong anywhere, that feeling that I'm not safe anywhere, continued and grew. And so I went to the one place that I felt safe, the arms of young men. And by the time I was 15, I was pregnant. Went to my boyfriend's mother, told her that I was pregnant, and she said, "Kelly, that's no problem. We'll take you and we'll get an abortion." Now, this was many years ago. I'm not going to tell you how many, but this was many years ago. And so the topic of abortion was not what it is now. It was not a word that I had ever heard. I grew up in a church that didn't talk about abortion, so I didn't know what abortion was. But I knew that I was terrified of disappointing my parents. I was terrified of ruining my life. I already had early acceptance to college. I was terrified of what my life was going to look like. And so when she said, "I've got an answer for you, that answer is abortion," I said, "Yes, let's do it." And I walked into that abortion facility alone at 15 with a wad of cash, and I had my first abortion. I walked in a straight A student, a nationally ranked tennis player, a regular church attender. And I walked out. And while I didn't understand the ins and outs of what had happened to me in the procedure room, I very much knew that I had killed my child. And so I knew that God would never be able to forgive me for what I had done. And so I turned in the opposite direction of everything good in my life. I barely finished high school. I quit playing tennis. I refused to go to church. I started drinking. I started doing drugs. Next thing I know, I'm running drugs up and down the East Coast for the Puerto Rican mafia. And every moment of my life was filled with fear, was filled with shame, was filled with regret. And so I would do anything to cover that feeling. Pornography, homosexuality, eating disorders, you name it, I would do it because I couldn't feel comfortable or safe anywhere that I went. Fast forward several years into that, and I was selling drugs out the back and bartending out the front of a restaurant. And I got tired of seeing my friends die. And I got tired of getting in street fights. And I got tired of all of the things that were going on. And I said, I want to do something to help people. I was always a helper. Even when I was selling drugs, I was kind of the mama hen. And I said, I want to do something to help people. And so I looked in my local newspaper. Yes, we used to look in our local newspaper for jobs. I know this table up here, you guys probably don't know that. Maybe some of you others in the room, I'm really dating myself right now. But I looked in the newspaper and saw that a local women's clinic was hiring for a receptionist. And I looked up the directions and went to the location, and it wasn't on the internet like it is now. There wasn't anything on my phone. I had to follow a map. And I go to the location, and I pull into the driveway, and it was where I'd had my first abortion. And I walked in the door. I got hired on the spot. This was over 20 years ago, and I got hired as a receptionist making $18 an hour, which, if you don't know, was really good money. Now for a receptionist. 20 years ago, that was incredible money. And there's multiple reasons why they paid that kind of money, and I will explain some of them to you now. So as the receptionist, my job was taking care of the reception area. That's not too hard to understand. But part of that was I would edit magazines. And so I would take the magazine and anything that was in it that might cue that maternal instinct in her, we would cut those pages out. So a diamond, engagement ring ad, a minivan, diapers, anything that might cue that, we wanted to remove that from her. In the waiting room, Gordon talks about how important men are. Well, we knew that. And so in the waiting room, when the men would come in with their girlfriends or wives, in the state of Virginia at that time, there was a 24-hour waiting period. So you would come the first day, the women would go back for their consultation, and the men would stay in the waiting room. And then they would come back the next day for their actual procedure. And so when those women went back for their consultation, we would turn the heat extremely hot, kind of like it is in here, or we would turn the air conditioning very, very cold because we wanted him to get up and leave. So when she came out, he wasn't there waiting for her. Because, sweetheart, if he won't support you for this appointment, what makes you think he will support you for a child? Now you hear that, and you probably think, my goodness, Kelly, that is really manipulative. Why would you do that? But remember, I was her. And so it was phrased to me. You know how hard this decision is. We want to make it as easy as possible for her. And so that is what I did. Also, remember, I was getting paid $18 an hour. The other part of my job was the recovery room. Now, our facility, the majority of the appointments were a sedation appointment. It was only $25 more to do that kind of a procedure or that kind of a sedation. And that was a mixture of drugs. Fentanyl was one of the drugs. And a twilight sedation, you may be familiar with it. If you've ever had oral surgery, if you've ever had like a knee surgery, if you've ever had a colonoscopy. Some of you in this room, I know, have had colonoscopies. But that is the kind of sedation that you use. For the young people, if you watch TikTok, when the people have the wisdom teeth out and they're talking crazy, they've had that kind of sedation. So the point of that sedation is twofold. One, it numbs the pain, so it's an antiseptic. The other is, not antiseptic, anesthesia. Yeah, I'm not a nurse. See, I'm a receptionist. I don't even know those things. But the other point of it is it takes away the memory, so it's an amnesiac. So you do not remember what has happened to you. Again, if you've had a colonoscopy, don't raise your hand. Do you remember the procedure? Nobody wants to remember that, right? Nobody wants to remember an abortion either. And so when you hear women say, I don't remember it, or not, I don't remember it, you hear them say, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that big of a deal. Do you remember the procedure? Because I've had 4 abortions, 2 first trimester, 1 second trimester, and 1 by chemical. And of those 4, I don't remember 3 of them. Now the 4th, the chemical abortion, I very much remember. Because I did it at home, alone, with no doctor, with no nurse, with no anesthesia. And I had to decide whether I was going to flush or not. I actually moved from that apartment because every time I would go back to that bathroom, I would return to the trauma and the scene of the crime. Kathy talked a little bit about the chemical abortion. Most women, we were finding it would take 10 to 20 years for abortion regret to really sink into them who were having surgical abortions. With a chemical abortion, it is instantaneous. Women are walking into pregnancy centers and saying, nobody told me I was going to see this. What do I do with this? And so we need to be very aware of what is going on with the chemical abortion. Kathy also talked about how with the Senate bill, they may no longer be able to tell women about abortion pill reversal. But guess who can? You can. So you need to be talking to your young men and women about abortion pill reversal. There's a 1-800 number that they can get connected and they can get it. So back to my story. I leave the abortion industry. I would love to say that I left this great pro-life advocate that I am now, but I was still very much living in fear. I was still very much addicted to drugs. I was still very much confused and didn't believe that my life had any value. And so continued on several more years. I was living in New Orleans with a boyfriend, and it was a very abusive relationship, and we decided that it was time for me to come home. And so we went out and partied, got into a fight. He left. I came home a bit later. And there was a point in the fight where we had ripped the door off the door frame, and there was a piece of the 2x4 from the frame laying on the floor. He pushes me on the ground. He picks up the 2x4. He goes to hit me over the head with it. Mid-swing, he drops the board. He punches me in the face several times. My face explodes. Blood goes everywhere. And he's like, oh gosh, I've actually really hurt her. And so the fight stops. The next morning, I wake up and I have text messages and phone calls from my father in Virginia. 24 hours after that, I pack up my belongings and I drive home to Virginia. I meet my father. He gets out of the car. He sees me, and I have 2 swollen eyes. I can't hardly see. My nose is flat and crooked. My mouth is all busted up. And as soon as he sees me, he begins to cry. And I said, oh, Dad, I was in a car accident. You know, what women say in those situations. And he looks at me, puts me in the car, and he looks at me and he says, Kelly, 2 nights ago I was asleep. And in the middle of the night, the Lord woke me up. And I had a vision of you laying dead on the floor with your head split wide open. And so I began to pray. Now, he didn't realize it then, and I didn't tell him, but that was the moment when my boyfriend had dropped the board. So when Kathy asks you to pray for these babies on the table, you need to know that your prayers are powerful. When I worked in the abortion facility, we didn't have the ability for like sidewalk advocates or people to come near our facility because of the way that it was set up. And there was this hill and there was an iron fence up on the top of the hill. And every so often we'd be in there working, preparing for the day, and all of a sudden our autoclave would go down. Or one of our other instrumentation devices would go down. I remember, I'm a receptionist, I don't know what they're called, but they would go down. And one of the nurses would look to the other one and say, is that guy and his kids out there praying? And we'd open the window, and sure enough, that man and his children were out there praying. They never knew that up until a couple of weeks ago. I told them that story. So you don't know how powerful your prayers are. So if you leave tonight with nothing else, please pray for this ministry. So a couple weeks later, I'm sobered up. I'm in my dad's church. I'm sitting in the front row because my dad was a pastor. He gives the altar call, and I hear as clearly as I've ever heard anything, I hear the voice of my Father God. Now, it wasn't the way that I had always thought it was going to sound, because I always thought that he was angry at me and he was disappointed in me. But I didn't hear that. I heard the voice of my brokenhearted Father, and he said, have you had enough? Now, I was reminded of the story of Adam in the garden. Gordon talked about that, in the garden, in the beginning, God said it's not good for man to be alone. They eat the fruit. They then separate from God. God didn't separate himself from them. They went and hid. And I had always heard God coming in the garden, Adam, where are you? But the reality it was, Adam, where are you? A man told me last night, actually, the Hebrew for that phrase is something that sounds more like, he said it, I'm not going to try to do it, but it's more like a guttural, like, ugh. The anguish of God because Adam was separated. And so God says, Kelly, where are you? Have you had enough? And I said, but God, how can you ever love me? How could you forgive me? Molested as a child, raped, abortions, all the things. How could you ever love me? And he said, Kelly, if you follow me, I will make beauty from ashes. And then I asked him, God, how are you going to make beautiful all of those things? And he didn't answer me, because sometimes he speaks in an audible voice. Other times he is silent. But every single area of my life where the enemy meant to steal, kill, and destroy me, God has not only saved, healed, restored, and redeemed. And one of the ways that God does that is by me getting to come here tonight and share my story. You can't make beautiful being molested. But when I share that story and somebody comes up to me and says, I've never told anybody this, but. You can't make beautiful being a drug addict. But when I have some parent that comes up to me and says, you know what, I'd almost lost hope for my child. But when you tell me that story, I now have hope again. You can't make beautiful abortions, but when I get to talk to women who are choosing abortion or thinking about abortion and tell them my story and tell them the realities of it and potentially save a life and their child's, God makes it beautiful. And you each have a story. The story of David and Goliath. David cuts off the head of Goliath to kill him. He knocks him down with the 3 stones, and then he goes and he takes Goliath's sword to cut off the head of Goliath. And then after that, every battle that David fought with Goliath's sword. For many of you in this room, your story is your sword. But if the enemy can't take you out of the kingdom of heaven, he will destroy your fruitfulness with fear and with shame. And so tonight, I am challenging each of you to get rid of shame, to get rid of fear, to walk in perfect love. John 4 says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Because fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. When things like your building get firebombed, it is really hard to have love. It is really easy to move into fear. Do you know what the opposite of faith is? Disbelief, sure. But I'm gonna go a little deeper. It's fear. You can't have faith and have fear. You can't have love and have fear. You can't love people you're afraid of. And we are called above all other things to love. And that is what they do at Life Choices. Roxanne and Josh told you everything. They completely sold my story for me. Roxanne said, I was scared. Didn't know what to do. If his dad didn't want him, I wasn't going to keep him. She knew that a dad helps ensure that perfect love. She walked into Life Choices and she felt loved and she felt safe. And all of that fear, she said, I never felt nervous or scared. I copied these down. I'm not making this up. She actually said that. I never felt nervous or scared. That is perfect love. Josh said, the joy of having our child replaced all the fear. That is perfect love. And we are living in a society where this next generation is so full of fear, they don't even know what's up or what's down. They have no security. They have no sense of right or wrong. They're so afraid of what somebody's going to say or what somebody's going to do or what it's going to look like. How many of you are glad the internet was not around when you were coming up? The fear of looking weird or saying something weird and it being there forever. But perfect love casts out fear. And so we need tonight to focus on that perfect love. Perfect love also has truth. Love without truth is hypocrisy. And one of the things that they do at Life Choices is when women walk in those doors, they're going to give them love, but they're also going to give them truth. They're not either or. They're the same. God is love and God is truth. And so when a woman walks in to Life Choices and she's like me, she's 15 and she's afraid and she's got a college acceptance already and her dad's a pastor and she doesn't want to disappoint him and she thinks that abortion is her best option. Life Choices is going to say, you know what? I know you're afraid. And yeah, your parents are probably going to be upset for a minute. But we'll help you with the conversation. We'll walk with you through that. We'll support you in that. If that same girl walked into Planned Parenthood, they're going to tell her, the best thing you can do is have an abortion. You don't want to have a child. That's going to ruin your whole life. But that young girl, like me, may walk out of those doors with so much shame and guilt that she turns to the very things that will actually ruin her life, not a child. When a young woman walks into Life Choices and she's addicted to drugs and she's terrified that she's going to have a drug baby, she's going to sit with them and they're going to say, sweetheart, we need to get you off of drugs. We need to get you clean because you have a hope and a future. You are better than the drugs we know that your life is crazy. We know that it's going to be hard, but we are here for you and we are going to walk with you, love and truth. If that same woman walks into Planned Parenthood, they're going to say, of course you need to have an abortion. You don't want a drug baby. So let's get you that abortion so you can go right back out and continue using the drugs. If a woman's in domestic violence and she walks in terrified to Life Choices, they're going to do everything in their power to get her safe, to make sure that she knows that she doesn't have to continue in that abuse, that she doesn't have to continue with that person telling her those things or beating her. They're going to make sure that she is safe and make sure that her baby is taken care of. It doesn't do any good to have a good baby if mom is being beaten. If that same woman walks into Planned Parenthood, they're going to say, of course you need to have this abortion. You don't want to be tied to that man forever. Let's get you this abortion so that you can go on with your life. And that woman's going to walk out with shame and guilt and walk back to the man who used to beat her and continue in that. There are so many things that could have taken Life Choices out this year. It's been a hard year. The building, health issues, people retiring, which isn't a bad thing. That's a great thing. Retirement's awesome. But it's hard for the people on the other side. Operating in 3 different locations. Y'all, I struggle with one location. Can you imagine trying to run an operation out of 3 different locations, dealing with women in crisis who are terrified, who any wrong word, you feel like they might run down the street to the abortion provider? But they've done it. They've persevered. They've made it. They served 784 clients. That's more people than in this room. That's how many lives they touched this year. Fear did not win. When I was walking today in the mountains, I was, walking on when you're walking on like some of these rocky paths, where I went, it was not like a known trail. And so it was kind of rocky. And so I'm watching the path. And then I looked up and I saw these views. And it was like the Lord said, if you keep looking at the path, you'll miss the view. They've been looking at the path. They've been putting that one foot forward. They've been doing the things. Tonight, Kathy, it's time to look at the view. Look at what you've done. Look at what you've accomplished. Satan didn't win. In fact, like you said, now we've got 2 ultrasound rooms. Now you've got free advertising all over the city. People that didn't know you existed now know you exist. Men, I'm going to talk to you for a moment. We need you. As the pro-life movement, we need you. As women, we need you. As a nation that is going not the way that any of us want, we need you. And saying I will support whatever she decides is not being a real man. Because we need a hero. Roxanne needed a hero. Now she had to kind of help him see the hero that he was. But she did, and he's a hero. Look at him there with his baby. being a good dad. Wouldn't even get food without taking his son with him because he's a hero and he protects him. There are women and families who do not have fathers. Fatherlessness is an epidemic in this country. It's part of the reason why our nation is going the way that it is. And while some of you may not be able to be fathers to these women, you can be fathers to the young men and women that are in your communities, in your churches, in your Sunday schools. Guys, take our young men out. Take them fishing. Take them for a hike. Take them to play golf. Take them to do whatever it is that you do. Football game, baseball game, whatever. Talk to them about this topic. Because if we could stop our young people from having sex, we wouldn't need to be worried about abortion. Did you hear Kathy say that they are in the public schools? Do you know what a big deal that is? That in the state of Colorado, of all places, they have been allowed into the public schools to talk to young people about healthy relationships, sexual risk avoidance, all these kinds of things. Planned Parenthood's already in those schools, just so you know. But so are you. But that's not enough. Men, we need you to talk to our guys. This fatherhood initiative that they are starting up, some of the men are anonymous. Some of the women may have no idea who the dad is. But you can step in and be a dad, be a father to the fatherless. Isn't that what the Bible calls us to do? And so, men, we need you. You know, it's when something like a firebombing happens, it is really hard to love. When you are standing outside of an abortion facility, I don't know if any of you do that, but if you ever do, I can guarantee you somebody's going to point to heaven using not their pointer finger and probably call you every kind of name that's imaginable. That's best case scenario. Worst case, you might get punched. You might get urine thrown on you. There's all kinds of things that are happening. And when those people are reacting that way, it is really hard to respond with love. But I want to tell you that in the recovery room where I worked, it didn't matter whether those women that came in shouting their abortion or with children in tow, conflicted about what they were about to do. In that recovery room, every woman was sad. Most were crying. It is the saddest place on earth. But women are not being told that it is okay to feel sad about an abortion. It is okay to have regret. It is okay to feel those feelings about having an abortion. Women are being told that it's empowering. It's a rite of passage. It's part of womanhood. It makes you powerful. It's what women need to be successful. And so when those women who have had an abortion and do not feel that way about their own personal abortion or have not been given the right to grieve an abortion, what they do with that emotion is they turn it into anger. They firebomb pregnancy centers. And so if you are a woman in this room, which statistically 1 in 4 women have had an abortion, that's a lot of women in this room. It may have been 50 years ago. It may have been 5 minutes. Well, probably not 5 minutes ago. 5 weeks ago. If you are a woman in this room who has had an abortion, please get the help that you need. Get the healing that you need. Because the world is going to come against you if you stand for life. And they're not going to do it in a nice, politically correct way. They're going to call you names. They're going to scream at you. And if you are not healed, you are going to react in anger. And that's the worst possible thing that you could do. On the cross, when Jesus is hanging on the cross, after being tortured, after being beaten, after being denied by his best friends, he's standing on the cross. Not sitting, he's standing. Hanging, really. And he is moved with compassion on the man beside him and on the people who are spitting and yelling at him. It is a supernatural kind of compassion. It is the only kind of real compassion that we can have in these times. Because the enemy is going to do everything in its power to make you react in anger. And you may think anger is a realistic emotion for abortion. But if you are feeling anger, that means there's something in you that is not healed. The proper reaction is brokenheartedness. And to love. It's the kindness of God that draws men to repentance. It is our kindness, our love, that will draw the other side to repentance. It is the kindness and the love of Life Choices that makes people like Roxanne and Josh change their minds. Statistics say that 78% of women that see an ultrasound change their mind, or not change their mind, choose life. And we saw a perfect example of that tonight. But I want to propose to you that it's not the ultrasound. It's the love and the support that they feel in those buildings that makes them think, you know what? Maybe we can do this. Because I saw plenty of ultrasounds and didn't change my mind. But that's because I wasn't feeling love and I wasn't feeling hope. So we're going to get to the part of the evening that I love. I'm going to ask you for money. And it's an important thing. Several weeks ago, I was speaking at a center, and I got to this point in the evening, and I said, you know, the center needs your money. And as soon as I did that, the Lord was like, no, I don't. And I was like, all right, we'll talk about that later. So I get in the car, I finish my thing. It wasn't very good, because, you know, when God speaks when you're doing something like that, it's kind of hard to go on. But I get in the car, and I'm driving, and I'm like, all right, God, can we talk about what you said? And he said, yeah, let's talk about that. And I'm like, what do you mean? The center needs their money. No, they don't. I can provide for their needs according to my riches and glory, which if you don't know is a lot. I have cattle on 1,000 hills. I can put a coin in a fish's mouth. I can do whatever I want to provide for their needs. And I will provide for their needs because they are doing my work. I'm like, okay, God, so what am I doing traveling around the country? And he said, well, let's talk about it. Okay, that's good. Let's talk about it. He said, you know the story of Jesus with wine? Jesus turns the water into wine. Yes, God, I know that story. So well, let's look at it. So by this time I'd parked. I wasn't driving down the road looking at the story, but I parked, open up my Bible. I look at the story. Mary tells them to do whatever Jesus says. Jesus tells the servants to take the barrels outside, fill them with water. They bring the barrels back in, and he turns the water into wine. Have you ever wondered why Jesus did it that way? Right? It's Jesus. He didn't need to turn water into wine. He could have just made wine. Right? He could have filled all the glasses with wine. I mean, look what he did with the fishes and loaves. He could have done it anyway. Why did he get the servants to get the water, and then turn that water into wine? So I'm talking to God about this. He said, yeah. You know your story. Yes, God, I know my story. You know the part in your story where I tell your dad, I wake your dad up, he has the vision, he prays for you and stops the fight. Yes, God, I know that part. Well, have you ever wondered why I did it that way? Yeah, actually, I have wondered why you did it that way. Right? He could have done it any number of ways. A pillar of fire could have smote my boyfriend. I could have stayed out and not come home. He could have passed out. You know what I mean? There's a lot of ways that God could have done it. Why did he wake my dad up? And he said, well, Kelly, I had supernaturally saved your life hundreds of times before that night, but you had no idea because I needed the partnership of your dad's prayers for you to recognize my hand in your life. And I went, oh. And he said, Jesus wanted the partnership of the people to go get the water so that he could turn it into wine. Well, friends, Jesus wants your partnership. And not only does Jesus want your partnership, but I'm asking you, I know you don't know me. Some of you I may not see until we get to heaven. But I'm asking you to please bless this ministry. Bless their socks off. And quite honestly, God already is blessing their socks off. But it's been a long, hard year, and their arms are a little tired. And it would be great for you all to partner with them and lift their hands. So the ways to do that financially, you've got on your tables this piece of paper. It gives you a couple things. A lot of times it's helpful for us to put numbers with actual items. So $118 a month will save the life of a mother and her child, like Roxanne and Josh. $50 will train one volunteer, empowering them to help clients make life-affirming decisions. $200 provides a free ultrasound for clients. $500 provides medical supplies. $612 does the education piece, helps go into the schools. And $1,000 will allow 6 participants to take the healing class. So your paper, you have a couple of options. Now, some of you may have on the way here talked to your spouse. That's what my husband and I do. All right, what are we going to give tonight? What are we going to do? And that's all well and good. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm asking you to be moved with supernatural compassion. And maybe give a little bit more. If you are already a monthly donor, thank you. Can you increase your gift? Can you give additionally on top of that gift? There's been a $10,000 pledge by a donor to help jumpstart the fatherhood program. Maybe you continue your monthly gift, but you can give to that fatherhood program. So you're going to fill this out. We're going to pray because I want you to ask Jesus. I want you to ask him what gift he wants you to give. So we're going to pray right now. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for being in this room tonight. And I thank you for the ministry of Life Choices. I thank you for this remnant in this town who has not been filled with fear, but is filled with faith and is filled with love. God, I ask that you would bless every household represented in this room and that you would provide for all of the needs of Life Choices according to your riches and glory. God, speak to each person here tonight. Tell them what to give, how to give. And we just ask all of this in your precious name, Jesus. Amen. Okay, so when you're filling this out, I used to work in a pregnancy center. If you do not write legibly, please ask your neighbor to write for you. Because there is nothing worse than trying to figure out whether it's a 3 or an 8 or a 7 or a 1. So write legibly. If you would like to give both monthly and the one time to do the Fatherhood Initiative, you can do that. It's allowed. In fact, it is preferred. I am giving you permission. Jesus says, yes, you can. And so fill this out. If you need another form, we can get you another form. We can do that. Fill this out. Make sure you fill all the information out, and then you're going to fold it up and you're going to put it in your envelope. on there. You know, I was walking on my hike today, and man, I was like just brought to tears with the beauty and the majesty of God. And the fact that I get to do this, that I get to travel around and tell my story and go to beautiful places like this. And I was walking up the mountain, and walking up the mountain was hard. But you know what? Walking down the mountain was hard too. But the thing about coming down the mountain is you have to watch your step, but you kind of have to go with the mountain. You know what I mean? Like if you try to go too slow, it's weird. If you just kind of go with the mountain, it's a much easier thing. We are on the other side of the mountain, Kathy. You've come up the hard side. You are on the other side. It is time to go with the flow of the Spirit. And the Lord is going to do amazing things in your ministry. And He's going to use you guys to do it. So volunteer, pray for this ministry. When that monthly debit comes out of your account, use it as an opportunity to pray for them. When you drive by that building, pray for them. Show up and volunteer and give them money. Do all three. Thank you very much. It's too